Adisa, you grew up in West Oakland, California?
Yes, yeah, I grew up in West Oakland. I grew up in in the 70s. Well, I came of age in the 70s in West Oakland, California. My mother lived there. My father lived in Vallejo, California, which is about a 30-minute drive away. And yeah, they split up when I was about 5 years old. But my father was always present in my life. He would come see us every weekend or pick us up every weekend. So I almost had two homes growing up. I'd be like living in Vallejo on the weekends, and I'd be living with my mother during the weekday. And it was a very supportive and nurturing environment. I have one brother and two sisters.
Did you go to Marine World?
Yeah, in Vallejo. You know about it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when I grew up in Vallejo, there was no Marine World. Yeah, there wasn't one at that time. It was just like just a back woody area with a pond. You know, it was Dan Minnie Park is what it was called, right? And so we would go there as kids and we'd fish and we would play. We had a tree house there. It was like great. It was just like this expansive land. And then when I got to high school, they built Marine World. And then we'd wake up in the morning, we'd hear dolphins and we'd hear, you know, the seagulls and all that stuff. Because I lived literally maybe about 5 minutes from
Oh,
Marine
wow,
World.
that close. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you said you had supportive parents, even though you were going back and forth. But you said that a lot of kids that you knew growing up in West Oakland, their lives weren't like that.
Yeah. For a lot of kids, especially my best friend Terry, for a lot of years, I never saw his father, and so I just assumed, you know, I didn't know where he was, but his father was in prison, right? And that was the reality for a lot of kids growing up in West Oakland. Either they were on drugs, and I'm not going to say all of them, but I just wasn't present to a lot of kids that had fathers in the home. And yeah, for reasons that, I mean, we can get into, you know, black men growing up in Oakland, you know, endangered species and all that. But yeah, but I had a father. He was always stable. He was always in my life. And then sometimes my friends would envy that, right? And what I saw my father do, and I think I have that trait now, he would extend himself to those kids. Sometimes he would give my friends allowances, right? And sometimes if we were going somewhere, he would say, hey, ask such and such to come along. So he became sort of this father figure for a lot of kids growing up in the neighborhood. And I say that my connection to that, because as I start to look at my own life growing up and the work I'm doing in Sierra Leone, the soccer tournaments I have, the relationship I have with the children over there and the child minors, and just my relationship with children in general, I kind of see that. I think I got that from my father. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting that the kids, that you felt that they, even at such a young age, that they knew, like, I don't have a father present and you do. And
yeah, and you know, there could be a little bit of shame involved with that. Like Terry didn't tell me his father was in prison, and then his father would come out and we'd be playing, and all of a sudden, you know, it'd be like 12, and then I wouldn't see his father for another 4 years. And then I wouldn't see him for another year. And then we'd see him when we were in high school, and then we'd work out at the gym, and he'd show us this workout at the park, and we'd be doing nothing but the bars, and we'd be doing this strong little workout. And I said, wow, your father's really strong. We're doing, you know, he's engaged. We're doing this workout. You know, unbeknownst to me that he was in prison a lot of that time. And so when he came out, it was sort of a, you know, he was making a connection back with his son, and I was getting to meet him, but my friend never told me he was in prison, you see. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I could say more on that, but I guess, and so in some senses, growing up in West Oakland also, my mother and father protected me from a lot also. Like, I just, you know, there's this thing about West Oakland where you could live here, but then if you go, and this was true up in Harlem a few years ago, not now, but you could live here, but then you go one block over and it's like, you know, it's drug infested and there's crack and there's this and that. And so, but my mother always kept me, and my father always kept me on this side. So I never veered. I could never veer over there, you know, and not because of fear of them, but I think it's just because they just instilled in me some really strong values growing up. And they set a good example. Like my father set a really good example of, you know, what to be as a man, and similarly with my mother also.
Right. I remember when crack was kind of like becoming a thing.
Oh yeah.
And so I remember people would always ask for like 10, like, because a rock was around like
Oh,
$10 or something.
Oh,
And there was
yeah.
always a story centered around $10.
Oh yeah.
Because I grew up in the Bay Area too, and it was the same
yeah.
thing. You cross one
Oh, yeah.
part and it was much different. And so I remember this one girl had this elaborate story, and I wanted to believe her, but because she said the $10 part, I was like, you know
Right.
what? The
Right.
kids at school had said, oh, that the rocks cost, one rock is $10.
And
So
see, what
just
you're alluding to
epidemic.
now, see, that's when kids know too much too fast. It's like this generation right now with the media. You know, back then, you could be living in the hood, and yes, you would be exposed to things that you shouldn't really know about: crack, weed, prostitution, you know, because we were living right off of San Pablo. San Pablo wasn't that far. So you could see prostitutes, you know, sometimes during the day. And so that's when the young kids, you get to be tampering with their minds, and you're giving them too much information. They're losing their innocence, if you will. And so I think my mother and father tried to protect my innocence for as long as possible. But I saw kids a lot younger than me that had lost their innocence a lot earlier. Yeah. Poverty would do that to you too. You know, because then you start knowing, like for me, I never knew where food came from, or that we were ever like, didn't have money. You know, but when you're poor, you know you don't have money, or somebody's going to have a conversation in the house around, you know, we don't have this, we have to get food stamps, or, you know, EMT. Yeah.
Right. Or also too, how the parents of the other kids treat you.
Yeah.
If you're aware enough and you can tell, well, yeah, I'm sorry you can't come to the birthday party. Yeah,
Yeah,
really
or there
sorry.
may not be a birthday party.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there may not be a birthday party, you know, so. Yeah, I guess so living in that environment and being, I guess, growing up with a level of, I don't know what I'm using the word empathy now, because it made me, having what I had, and it just made me more appreciative, and it made me more just really sensitive around who other people were. I was always the kid wanting to help somebody out. I was always the kid wanting to go the extra mile to make sure somebody's feelings weren't hurt. And that was me. That was me and my family too, so.